Hey, folks, morning. It's number two. 14 days later, uh, Raymond uses one of the Storm the Flesh potions on Wes. And then we discuss, the Gorgon left a note for us. She wants revenge against the priest, but she needs the undead taken care of because they can overwhelm her. Yeah, because so we discussing further the bone scroll, and so we get that out. We'll take a look at it again. And Wes goes catatonic. He then remembers how to speak and write Rossiani and recalls a memory of fighting a giant lizard coming up out of an underground waterfall and reaching for his Gauss rifle. Oh, all these things we could be getting, and we get all these language things instead. Okay, so uh, we give the second potion to Alexander, thinking if all else, we could take Runt to the temple, and they would be willing to help him there. Okay, the next day, Raymond brings us up to speed on everything that happened during the time we were stoned, including that the goblins are mining something, and those local kids that come up here for their adult initiation stuff were up here, and they ended up ambushing some of the goblins that were not struggling. It was shoot, being left behind. The stragglers or straggling goblins. There we go. So also, Raymond has a note from Lynn. Lynn is the name of the Gorgon, and the writing on the note is very similar to that of the scroll. Should dive into that further on. Oh, back to the scroll. Excuse me. The scroll, instead of being script, was typewritten. It was a printout. I meant to ask if this note from Lynn was there similar in the type of script or the style of script. So anyway, Raymond leaves a note for Lynn saying, "Hey, come talk to us. We need to figure something out," kind of deal. To see if she can vote and to see if she can read the scroll that we have. That day, we all go hunting. And Alexander did like a critter, so he comes back with an elk with 11 man-days of food. That night, Lynn comes to the camp and asks if she can join us. She has taken some sort of precautions, so if we don't, look directly at her, we should be safe. So, Wes kind of has this robe that represents his station and his not class, but order of spell casting and something else about from the guild, the Mages Guild back in Karst. So he's got his hood all the way up, so all I can do is just see down his feet, kind of thing, to keep himself safe. And I think Alexander does something similar. He mentions doing that. Okay, so as we're moving on, we can see that she has some sort of a nice dress on and blocking boots. Takes the scroll tube and mentions that before she was cursed, she was a follower of Lorath. She says that the scroll itself is empowered, and it's for a worship service to create a sanctified space. Something like this could be used to reconsecrate the temple that the priest in the cage is currently desecrating. And certainly somebody from Kars may have the strength to do the same sort of thing. And she points to Raymond and says, what deity do you worship? And says math, and what was it? She's the And she says, the same rituals used to prepare yourself could be used here as well. And there's some more discussion going on about her curse. It is such that the nature of her connection between her and Lorath, and for that matter, any other greater power, they have, like we have with our deity, with the severed stick. And the only reasons that you die is a consequence of your connection to the greater powers. And if that connection is severed, so is your ability to connect to it. And that's what happened with her curse. Alexander, kind of asks, well, who cursed you? And she said it was her husband after he was taken. That's taken by whom? It's just only one that can take. Will not mention his name. There were 5 at that time. I don't know how many there would be by now. Alluding to something going on. That's kind of things. It's really the Forg and his minions, his powerful minions that couldn't be killed. Anyway, it is possible. She tells us that it's possible to access the ritual's property, and the scroll should give us power to defeat the curse on Runt, assuming that Raymond can actually overcome that curse. He said it would be best to do such a thing in a great temple, but the one that's in the caverns is all desecrated, so it's not possible there. So we kind of do something. I don't remember now what it was, but while we were gone, she's setting up an altar, some candles and some stuff with like twigs and natural things, making something, right? And Wes has Hazer, something we could do to assist. For example, Wes worships Celeste, the goddess of the stars, who's in charge of light, wisdom, and knowledge. And it's nighttime. We're doing this thing. And he was successful. He gave some kind of bonus to Raymond. So Raymond initially wrote the failure. And so Lynn stops Raymond mid ritual until hey, no, stop. You need to start over. So, remember, the scroll's empowered. Let it do its thing. Okay, so he gets a second roll. And he has a vision of a storm, and he can feel that it's angry, but not at him. Just this pervasive, unclear, violent intent. Excuse me. He gets the impression that if I, the storm, were to help you, you must accept a Gaius in return. You must destroy the Howler. Okay, so the scroll itself has 3 points of power, POW, actual characteristic. And he can use those if it gets him closer to destroying the Howler. Okay, so while he's having this vision, the rest of us, this storm comes in, rain and wind for like 20 minutes. It's massive. But then, it goes on, right? Okay, so once the ritual's over, Raymond uses his Repulsions book, because the Repulsions book, I don't know, he hasn't learned. He's got the first block of spells. He doesn't have the second block of spells, because as a channeler, he needs to sacrifice power for each block. But the ritual knowledge, I guess, is in the book itself. So he's going to try to cast a higher level spell out of the book. Okay. Because he doesn't have remove curse. He has some kind of neutralize, which is for a short duration. So to remove curse is a higher level spell. There we go. Yeah, 7th level. His power currently is 11. He attempts to do the remove curse, fails. So he takes a point of power from the scroll, so he now has a power of 12. And he attempts to cast remove curse, and again, it fails. And there was something that Bruce was talking about when you're doing certain spells. If you fail at it, you cannot attempt again until something has actually changed, like your power has gone up, right? Because he's a channeler, so it has to do with power. Excuse me. So we take the second point of power from the scroll. His power is now 13, but he makes it. And Runt is no longer turned to stone. Okay, so a number of discussions ensue as we're sitting around the campfire at night. Some comment had come up from I think it was Runt about the camp, because they're talking about giving her like a helmet to cover her head so that she doesn't turn us to stone, and that anybody who sees us won't recognize her as being the Gorgon. Because we're going to go back to the caves and we're going to try to take out all the undead and get rid of the priest. Give her revenge. So mention about the camp comes up, and Runt says something about, turning them all to stone. She goes, "What? You don't trust these people?" And so discussion about the Baron itself and this group of mercenaries that he hires that is anti-Lorathian, about how the Lorathian high priest is like hiding her position. They're doing this home, earth, and something else as a facade. And, Liz goes, that conflicts completely with Lorath. Lorath is the goddess of vengeance. And she's getting all hot under the collar. And there's more discussion going on, and Runt kind of shows her armor. This is what we do, kind of thing, because under his lapel, he's got his symbol, kind of deal. And Lynn recognizes that armor. Says that it's often given to those who are sworn to the protection of the priestesses of Lorath. It's a badge of rank. It was a badge of rank at the time. Lots of conversation this session. So Runt asks about how flesh to stone works. How's that work? Is it to see you? Is it you seeing us? And if I go to turn to stone, what about my clothes? Why does that not stay the same, but actually turns to stone as well? But she has no idea how this all works. After she was cursed, she managed to escape, and over the centuries, has watched civilization deteriorate over time. From time to time, adventure souls would seek her out, her hiding place. So there are statues all about, and that somehow this priest in the caves found out about her and felt that she would be of value to the elves. And Alexander, the Dark Ones. We know that they're drove. She mentions about forces are gathering against Ford, and over the progression of time. There's something else at work here. The tribes, their families, they've splintered and broken apart. They're a little more than shadows of what they once were. And so society itself, we get the prophecy yet? No, it's next. Society itself, is deteriorating over time. And Alexander asks about technological changes. I don't remember the actual words he said, but that's what he meant. And she asks things like, do you have water running in your homes? How do you keep your homes warm? There was technology before that she used that is no longer available, prevalent. We do mention about the temple in the swamp by the moat house that had bathrooms with like sink taps and stuff. So we know there were places that had water and such, running water and such. And she says, there are ruins with such amenities, and we talk about how we found this too. That's true. And the Run mentions that there are ancient things that even we have found. And she asks, what? And then Run describes the carbine using Carillion, because that's the language that the word was known in. Because there's such words for carbine now. But she doesn't understand Carillion at all. But he then describes the carbine and the memories that appeared. And then there's the conversation that Alexander had similar sorts of memories and that kind of thing, the corresponding memories. And she, she's not intrigued, but almost freaked out about that. But she does say there is a prophecy. She doesn't know it's specific because it was outside her study. She's actually an essence user like Wes, which we'll find out about later. It has something to do with the turning lands and what's kind of The light plays in the description. Because we were told about the land swirling in the southern section of the land separating Forge Kingdom from the rest that plays south. We probably don't know. She's talking to us, right? Is that the place where Forge was defeated? There were forces that were unleashed, so the very ground itself was tortured. It's not clear he was actually destroyed. Um, because there are entities that are beyond the capability of being killed, and so we're in prison. We know about them. There was the one guy that showed up out of the Temple of Elemental Evil, down to the second levels he was broken out of. The Howler's been flying around. He was previously in prison somewhere. That kind of thing. Case, the ground there turns on that spot, and it's apparently some kind of multi-directional place. So you can go to many places from there, and things from many different places can go there. Excuse me. The prophecy is that people from outside will come and stop the turning. And somehow the discussion got turned to the lizard people. They used to be scholars, but now they've evolved to these primitive savages living in huts. Anyway, that goes on, and she departs. And then Raymond then tells us the price for getting her back that I being Raymond, have to deal with the Howler. Deal with? What do you mean deal with? What does that mean? And then, Lorath says that Raymond, have to destroy the Howler. Okay. Next day, we discuss plans on going to the caves and that sort of thing, what to do. Which reminds me that in the live play, I had to go take my nighttime medicine. And when I come back, everybody is taking a break, so I went ahead and hit pause. But I didn't unpause it until well after we were already back in the caves doing combat. Someone mentioned something, I realized, I didn't turn it back on. So there's this big gap. There's a space of quiet, nothing happening, and then there's this gap of we missed stuff. So we decided to go in through J and come through the underground, leave Lynn at the storage room as we go on. But it kind of comes obvious as we're going along that she's getting too far behind. So from time to time, we have her come up behind us. Okay. While we're in the storage room, Runt is searching about. He finds a symbol on box that he doesn't recognize. So he asks, "Hey, Lynn, do you recognize this symbol?" And there's this little back and forth about, what symbol? And so he turns his head so he can't see her and says, the symbol on that box. Which box? What symbol? What are you talking about? The one I don't recognize. So he describes the symbol to her and she finds it. Oh, that's the symbol of Toss, the city far to the east. And the box itself is full of silk, so she starts taking silks out. Like, oh no, this is nice. We'll keep this one. Keep this one. Anyway, we make our way all the way around to the cell where Lynn was held captive because Runt had left his lockpicks there. They're gone. Okay, so we continue on, go west, and we go south where that big hallway was that went out to exit K. We continue on south. That's where the dormitories are supposed to be. And actually, at the very, very turn, it goes down. There's like a T intersection kind of thing, and it continues on. But anyway, we get down further south to what's essentially some sort of a throne room. It's been desecrated. There's like a dozen skeletons at the far end, but they're not moving. They're not doing anything. So we kind of inch forward and scoot forward so we can see them. The flashlight's got the back wall, and Raymond moves forward, and they're not moving. He gets up close to one of them, still not moving, so he bashes it with his shield, thinking that he could destroy it outright. But as soon as he hits it, all the skeletons activate, and Runt has a magical dagger that lets you know they're undead nearby, and it lights up. So we have combat, and it didn't save the combat stuff. What the crud? I keep notes for this game, so we've got this journal of everything we've done. But the first round of combat, Wes tries to cast Shield on himself. Raymond casts Repulsions 5 on skeletons. Runt moves up, and Alexander moves up. So Runt essentially gets surrounded. 3 of the skeletons get feared from the repulsions, and they take off running towards Alexander. Oh, and Lynn is like right behind Alexander, or not Alexander, behind Wes. They run towards Wes, and Lynn is right behind Wes. So Alexander does gets a attack of opportunity as they run by, hits number 11 for some damage, not much. Raymond gets attacked. He survives that. Runt gets attacked, and he ends up going down one leg. But during the process of that, he's parrying. He attacked, and one of the skeletons got a special parry, so it damaged his dagger. Then one of the skeletons attack, and he gets a critical parry. He ends up breaking the skeleton's sword. Wes gets an attack of opportunity. The skeletons run by. Fumbles his attack. Drops his dagger, and it's recoverable in 1d3 rounds. And he rolled a 5 on the d6. So in 3 rounds, he can have the dagger back. So we start successfully this. 3 rounds? That's 36 seconds. That's a long time to pick up a dagger. So we figured it got dropped to the ground. One of the skeletons kicked it. It got skittering in the dark. We lost direction of it. And okay, so it takes 3 rounds for him to go get there and get back to where he was. We kind of put this distance factor, movement stuff involved. But still, he's got to go out. He's got to wander around and find it. Casts a light bolt. It's not light bolt, though. It's like an earth bolt at one of the skeletons. And, Alexander got a special or a critical? It was a critical. Alexander got a critical hit on one of the skeletons. Did 25 points of damage to his abdomen. Cuts it in half. So the legs are still there kicking at him. And the upper torso and arms and head start crawling towards him. And the player is freaking out. What? I just killed it. What? It's undead. It's already dead. How can you kill something that's undead? So he got confused as a player on the mechanics involved in skeletons. There's a slight sidebar discussion about that kind of stuff. Oh, anyway, that's where we ended because the GM had something he needed to do, so we ended early. But Wes, after seeing Runt get surrounded by skeletons, is going to go and back him up. He can't go look for his dagger. He's going to leave his dagger behind. Oh. A conversation, lots of information passed. A little bit of combat with some very interesting effects. Happy gaming, everyone.